Aloha, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the FFF Show, where we will be continuing our conversation with local attorney Jim Hochberg as we say goodbye to him. So stay tuned because you want to learn more about all of the great work he's done here in the state of Hawaii. And stay till the end because there's a special ending that we want you to be able to see and participate in. So let's chat about that. Anyway, let's move on to the next one. November 21, 1996. So same year, Honolulu Advertiser, bada bing. So this is the convention. What is this? Where is this? Attorney Jim Hochberg, an advocate of traditional marriage who opposes same-sex marriage, said he was surprised and pleased by the decision. So I guess there was a decision on a constitutional convention. Do you remember this, Jim?
I think it had to do with every 8th year in Hawaii of every decade.
Right.
The Constitution requires that the elections office puts on the ballot in November, shall there be a constitutional convention? And the issue had to do with what number of votes equals a yes vote, because you have yes votes, you have no votes, you have blank votes, and you have spoiled votes. And so the unions were trying to say that no votes. You know what? It's so long ago, I don't remember.
You've been doing a lot of this stuff for a very, very, very long time. But the fact that the article says that you were surprised and pleased by the decision, it must have been a good thing, because I've never seen you in the newspaper as being surprised and pleased. No, you were surprised and pleased after the vote in 1998, which I'm sure that's going to be one of the articles that are coming up. So let's move on to the next one. January 29th, 1999, Honolulu Advertiser. Governor wants gay people to have equal access to all public facilities. And this was a bill that it referred back, Jim. Hochberg sued the state in 1991 over the law banning employment discrimination based on sexual orientation, arguing it might force churches to hire or continue to employ gay people despite church members' religious convictions against homosexuality.
So I talked about that case last week.
Yes, you did.
It was dismissed, but it was dismissed with an order that the dismissal was based on the AG, the Attorney General of the State of Hawaii, in response to the lawsuit in their court papers on behalf of the state, saying, Judge, there's no claim here because the state of Hawaii would never enforce this employment discrimination.
You need to find that, and we need to gold lame.
But they said, these 10 circumstances that Hochberg's plaintiffs are worried about will never happen in Hawaii because the state of Hawaii would never enforce it. So the judge said, okay, state, I'm dismissing this case because it can never be enforced this way. And as I said last week, I've had lawyers that were defending employers against gay discrimination in the workplace ask me to send a copy of the order dismissing my case because they could use it to say you can't bring this case.
So where does that stand right now?
Well, that case was dismissed back then. But what the judge did, he dismissed it because none of the clients could make the claim if the state was never going to make the prosecution.
We need to find that, Jim. That's so good. But again, going back to this, how many people were opposed? Read this little paragraph right there.
There was angry opposition at the legislature in 1991 when lawmakers voted to prohibit discrimination against gay people in the workplace. And Dan Foley, said he expects another political fight this year.
So what happened? So this was 1999. Moving forward, there were more and more challenges to Hawaii's law.
This change for equal access to public facilities is the Aloha bed and breakfast problem.
Right. And I think I think that's going to be our let's move to the next one. I think that we are getting there. So this was December 20th, 2011.
Yeah, that would be Phyllis Young.
Lesbian couple claims bias in refusal of vacation rental. So that's so. Why don't you?
So there's federal law about public accommodations, and there's state law about public accommodations. They're different, but they're really the same.
I remember having discussions with people about this because, when people were talking about public accommodations, they kept honing on one portion of the law. But when you started fighting it, people don't realize that this is why reading those legislative bills, it's really important, because when they're trying to tweak a law, it may not just be one statute. There may be 10 statutes that they have to go in and adjust.
So a public accommodation under federal and under state law is a business. It's basically a physical location that is open to the general public, where things are bought or sold, services are rendered, and federal law and state law say you can't discriminate in opening public accommodations on the basis of the protected classes that are in those things. Federal law is the standard: race, religion, national origin, creed. Hawaii had all those. They wanted to add, in the prior story, sexual orientation. Since then, they've added gender identity and expression. But anyway, back then they were adding sexual orientation. The federal law and the state law for Phyllis Young's Aloha Bed and Breakfast had a paragraph that was an exemption. You're not prohibited from discriminating on the basis of race, religion, or sexual orientation if you live in the property, it's your primary residence, and you rent 4 or fewer rooms.
Which, in this case, that was exactly what was happening.
And what the Intermediate Court of Appeals in Hawaii ended up ruling, bizarrely, was that because sometimes Aloha Bed and Breakfast rented rooms for vacation rental times. I forget what the word was back then. She also she had 3 rooms in her 4-bedroom house that were downstairs. Her husband and her master suite with the rest of the living room, kitchen was upstairs. And so there was a bathroom downstairs for the 3 bedrooms. So she would rent rooms through like a bed and breakfast. In fact, she advertised on Airbnb and whatever those websites were. And she was also a realtor, so she knew the exemption in the law. And so when the lesbians called and they also on Phyllis Young's Aloha Bed and Breakfast webpage talked about the Bible study that you're welcome to join us on Thursday nights, but you're not compelled to come. And then I think it was a setup case because of the Bible study. Maybe not. I don't know. But when one of the lesbian couple called to make the reservation, Phyllis, knowing she was exempt from the prohibition because she lived in the house and only rented 3 rooms, said, I'm a Christian. I'm not comfortable with having 2 lesbians in a bed together in my house.
And if I remember, though, she was also clear that she would not rent to an unmarried heterosexual
let her
couple.
own daughter have her boyfriend stay in the house. They had to get a hotel.
So I want to be clear that this wasn't just a pick on people because they were in a
she was a very serious, charismatic Catholic.
Right.
And so she said to the lady, I'm not comfortable with you and your girlfriend staying in a bed in my house, but my friend down the street has a bed and breakfast. It's actually a nicer house than mine. I'll refer you there. And it makes kind of rational sense that if I was coming on a vacation because my friend was having a baby, why would I want to force myself into a house where they didn't want me because of this hot political issue? Why don't I just go to this other person and get a room, right? But no. So they filed a complaint at the Civil Rights Commission, which in Hawaii enforces the public accommodations, employment, and real estate transactions, anti-discrimination laws. So on Christmas Eve, I think, or really close to Christmas, with news cameras there, like when Mar-a-Lago got raided. They had the news there. How did the news know to come, right? They had news cameras at Phyllis's front door, serving her with this EEOC complaint that she discriminated based on their gender or their sexual orientation. And you really have to know Phyllis. She's just a very beautiful human being.
Sweetest
Sweet
lady.
She's a grandma.
Oh my gosh, yes.
You know? And so she calls me, and we respond to the Civil Rights Commission complaint, and we say she's exempt.
Now, I have to say, again, always as full transparency, I knew Phyllis.
Yeah.
And so when the whole situation was coming down, she called me and she goes, I need an attorney. And it was so funny. And this is what we're going to miss about you, Jim Hochberg, when you're not here, is that, you know, we there are still going to be these kind of cases, right? And so I happily gave her your number, and it was a lot of work.
It was more than 10 years.
It was a lot of work.
It was an ADF case. They were very supportive.
Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, when the Intermediate Court of Appeals said, because it was a transient accommodation sometimes, that they were a hotel and the exemption didn't apply. So we asked the state Supreme Court to overrule that, because there's no legal authority for that position. A hotel has to be open 24/7. It has to have a lobby. There's no way a private home is, it's not a hotel. Okay, so they were wrong. State Supreme Court declined to take the case. So then we asked the U.S. Supreme Court. This is the only case I've ever done in 40 years that I almost got the U.S. Supreme Court to take the case. And anyway, they declined. So what happened is, when the case came back down as the Intermediate Court of Appeals decision that it was a hotel, so she was not permitted to have the exemption, that was on liability. The next part of the case was going to be, what are their damages since we lost on the exemption? But it was a terrible opinion. Anyway, so we negotiated a settlement, and each of the two lesbians were going to get some money. And Phyllis didn't have money to have available for that. A national ministry provided every penny. It was amazing.
And then what was this? Refresh my memory about that. She was going to, in her house, she was going to have to post some kind of.
The Civil Rights Commission said that she had to post signs. So they ruled against her, but we appealed that to the circuit court.
Right.
They didn't say this. The Civil Rights Commission did not say she was a hotel. That's so outlandish. Nobody expected that from the Intermediate Court of Appeals. But they had her. She was going to have to put posters up in her house saying she won't discriminate based on sexual orientation, and we flat out said no.
Fast forward. We'll get to that. Let's move to the next article, because all this stuff does end up tying in. So next one. So this,
are we out of time yet? Or are we still going?
No, we're already in the after show.
Oh, so it just abruptly cut off.
Yeah. So
okay.
Yeah. So February 13, 2013, Honolulu Star Advertiser.
What's that vertical line between the 3 and the H?
Oh, it's just a pretty thing to make it look nice. This was a little thing that Jim wrote, letters to the editor.
Sumner LaCroix. That was the guy back in 95.
So, because everything connects. So this was, Jim did a little letter to the editor, question study on gay tourism. And so you want to talk about that a little bit?
So when I was on the 1995 Commission on Sexual Orientation and the Law, the UH professor whose name I wasn't remembering was Sumner LaCroix. So this is 20 years later. He's still at UH. He's still making these outlandish claims. And so I guess he did some kind of a study at UH on islands stand to lose gay tourists over something. I don't know. It admits that adoption of same-sex marriage could change visitors' perceptions of Hawaii and reduce the number of visitors. Study reports 3 significant limitations that need to be considered carefully. Oh, this was when the legislature was going to pass same-sex marriage. It did not pass. So in October, Abercrombie had a special session.
Right, it did pass. Yeah.
Once the pent-up demand is spent, and this is, I guess, quoting from Sumner LaCroix's new opinion, the annual U.S. same-sex rates are likely to be much less than 10%, and spending by same-sex couples and their guests after 2016 will be substantially lower than projected in the report. The study presents visitor spending results as illustrative rather than definitive, and he also said a substantial standard error should be attached to the estimates. So I don't remember writing that, but it must have been fun.
Well, I'm laughing because, okay, going back again historically, right? When
that was, and I was the Hawaii family.
You did that under Hawaii Family Advocates.
Okay.
So I have to laugh because I remember that after they passed same-sex marriage, right? There was all this promise of revenue. Do you remember that?
Of course.
So here they were saying,
and 10 people got married or something like that.
Well, it just cracks me up because, they say that our side does this, but they're guilty of this too, where they were saying, okay, you're not going to allow same-sex marriage, so we're going to lose all of this potential revenue. And then when same-sex marriage happened, they were saying, we're going to have all this, because everybody's going to come to it. We now fast forward, I believe, 10 years now that same-sex marriage has been legal in the state of Hawaii. There has nowhere been the revenue that they promised. Now, I'm sure there is some revenue out there,
well, and one of the reasons is, generally speaking, same-sex couples are anti-marriage. They don't want to get married. That's the patriarchy.
Well, and then going back to the early arguments, like, no, we don't want this. We just want this. No, we we don't want.
We just want the benefits. We don't want marriage.
They keep moving the goalpost
always,
but that's politics, and that's the way the legislature works. So let's move on. So July 7th, 2013, Honolulu.
This was after the session.
Yeah.
But before the special session.
Right. So go ahead and hit enter 2 more times. So this was a long article that was in the Honolulu Star Advertiser. It was the Insight, where they were talking about same-sex marriage. So we're still talking about this.
This was the Jackson versus Abercrombie case, wasn't it?
Yes, because may I quote from this article, Jim Hochberg is the attorney representing Hawaii Family Forum in the case for the defense of traditional marriage, or Hawaii's marriage statute. He doesn't think much of importance has changed. Oh, they did a typo in this article. Has changed nationally where the local case for traditional marriage is concerned. The only thing that changed is the majority of the Supreme Court became lawless in that DOMA decision, he said, quoting you. So, and then he said, and in Hawaii, there is still no constitutional basis for same-sex marriage. An effort by the legislature to legalize it is sure to draw a challenge, he added.
So you remember that because in the 2013 legislative session, same-sex marriage did not pass. So they got 2 more gay couples, Jackson, and I forget who the other person was, to file a lawsuit requiring under the state of Hawaii Constitution, the U.S. Constitution, they had to be given marriage licenses. And we were worried that the Department of the Attorney General, this was Abercrombie's Attorney General, Governor Abercrombie's, they weren't going to really defend it because they actually were supporting same-sex marriage at the legislature. So we filed a motion in the Jackson versus Abercrombie case on behalf of HFF, asking the judge, and it was Judge Alan Kay again, would you let HFF intervene as a defendant because we don't trust the state to adequately defend on behalf of the people?
And they allowed us to do it.
And they let us to.
And so, why? Because I am a PAC rat and was able to provide you proof that
all the work that you have, all the interest over all the years that HFF had in this issue.
Which, again, goes back to any Johnny come lately can come up and say they care about the issues. But there are few organizations that actually put their money where their mouth is.
And then after the motion for summary judgment that we filed saying there's no constitutional right to same-sex marriage. And they filed a motion for summary judgment saying there is absolutely, and we won because Judge Kaye wrote that really long opinion in our favor, throwing out the case because there is no constitutional right to same-sex marriage.
And going back to Hawaii's constitution, in 1998, the voters gave the legislature the right to reserve the power to reserve marriage to opposite-sex couples. Fast forward to today,
well,
and now
in between July and the filing of the Jackson versus Abercrombie case and our winning, they appealed to San Francisco's Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. And I went up to San Francisco for the hearing. And by the way, if you ever go to San Francisco, which nobody might want to, go to the Ninth Circuit Courthouse. It's a 1940s marble building. It's like a building in Italy. It's amazing. Now, anyway, so after we argued that the Judge Kaye was correct in the Ninth Circuit, fast forward to November 2013, and the special session passed same-sex marriage, the case folded because it was moot.
And that made all right. So let's go to the next one. So this is September 13, 2017, abortion in Hawaii. And this, I love this because this was the one where I love to tell this story that Jim and I are at the Capitol. They're trying to pass a bill that's going to force pregnancy resource centers to post a sign, which they specifically said what font, what size,
what words,
but no, they didn't
specifically the words. They did.
They did, but let me clarify because I actually was obnoxious at the hearing on this one. I didn't do it, but I had somebody else do it. Oh gosh, I'm going on the record doing it, but oh well. They didn't say font, they just said size. And so I asked somebody to go ahead and make that sign with the right size, but to do it in some funky like Cyrillic or whatever. And then, so they had to clarify that. But so anyway, they were going to force pregnancy resource centers to post a sign.
To basically market.
To market abortion.
With specific words. I think there were 71 words in this paragraph. And they had to have every single one of those words in the same order for the meaning that they were required to post.
I'm there at this hearing. We're obviously opposing it. And I'm watching Attorney Jim Hochberg get up at every hearing going, if you pass this, I'm going to sue you. If you pass this, I'm going to sue you. Now, mind you, looking back at all these stories we've done, is Jim Hochberg one to throw out, veiled threats?
Never.
Absolutely not. So every hearing, you pass this, I'm going to sue you. You pass this, I'm going to sue you. So they passed it, and Jim Hochberg
and ADF
sues. And it says, one day, and again, this is directly from the article, one day after Governor David Ige signed Act 200 into law in July, the National Institute of Family Life Advocates partnered with the affiliate Calvary Chapel Pearl Harbor, which runs the Pregnancy Center, a place for women in Waipio, to sue Ige and the Attorney General Douglas Chin over the law. So Jim Hochberg put his money where his mouth is and sued and won. Well, you won because of what was happening in California.
Well, the Becerra case against NIFLA, National Institute of Family and Life Advocates, they have the same thing going on in California way ahead, which is why Hawaii's legislature passed this law. Because in California, the federal court and the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals both said, of course we can tell Christian pregnancy centers to advertise for abortion, but that's not constitutional law. That's California judging, right? That's liberal judges.
California judging.
So we knew because ADF was involved in the case in California, they were going to have a Supreme Court opinion soon. And so when we sued here, our judge said, let's wait to see what happens in California because any judge has a lot of work.
And the legislature passed the darn, because that's basically
part of my testimony was why don't you wait to see what the ruling is?
But they just, again, going back to, they don't care if the legislature decides they're going to do something and they have the majority to do it, they're going to do it.
Right. And so smart judges have a lot of work. So if there's a case that's going to be decided in the upcoming future by the Supreme Court in another jurisdiction on the same thing, might as well put it on hold and do other work that doesn't have that coming down the pipe, right?
Yep.
And so anyway, once the Supreme Court of the United States ruled in the California Becerra case, because Becerra, who's the guy that runs the health department under Biden, was the attorney general in California in 2017. Our judge here said to the state, guess you lose. And so, again, the legislature had to pay our legal fees.
Yep. So hands up to Jim Hochberg. Okay, next. So this was March 18, 2019. Supreme Court rejects, this was going back to Phyllis Young's
Aloha
case.
Bed and Breakfast.
So this is where the announcement was made. So you remember this one?
Yeah, so we had been asking the U.S. Supreme Court. So thousands of cases get filed at the Supreme Court of the United States, but you have no right to a U.S. Supreme Court review. And they pick about 3%. And most of the cases are criminal cases because incarceration is very different than just losing money or, that kind of a thing. And so we were asking the U.S. Supreme Court to overturn the Intermediate Court of Appeals decision in the state of Hawaii that said her house did not have the benefit of the exemption of living there and renting 4 or fewer rooms because she was a hotel, because she sometimes rented for a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 6 months. And that's it's as bad as the Dred Scott decision. So we wanted the U.S. Supreme Court to say, no, Hawaii, you can't do that. And when the Supreme Court is looking to take new cases for the next session, they tell you that your case is in consideration, and then they say, these are the cases we've rejected. Ours stayed through that. And then the next announcement, these are the cases we've rejected. Ours stayed through that. We were thinking, wow. Oh, and here's the really cool thing. So that case, the request to the Supreme Court to take your case is called a motion for writ of certiorari. That's the Latin word for please take my case. And usually nobody files any amicus, friends of the court, supporting you at that stage. Our case, the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association filed a amicus brief supporting the Supreme Court taking that case. Somebody from the Baptists, we had all these, like I forget how many, maybe 10 amicus briefs from national people supporting the Supreme Court taking our case. And I think that's why it survived so far. But back in 2019, the gay marriage thing had been going on for so long, and the gay rights thing had been going on for so long, they really didn't want to deal with it. And then later, when we saw the Supreme Court case saying you had to have same-sex marriage nationally, I forget the name of that case, the Obergefell case. I think they didn't take our case because enough of them wanted to do what they did in Obergefell.
Yeah. All right, let's move on. So this was, do you see the date there, Jim? Okay.
June 27, 2022.
So this anti-abortion advocate on how the Roe v. Wade decision legally affects Hawaii. We did a whole show after the overturn of Roe because, again, we knew that there was going to be, even though Hawaii was such a strong pro-abortion state, we knew that there were going to be things coming
legislature
up. And so we were just spinning that wheel. And so this one
says Jim Hochberg is an Oahu attorney and president of Hawaii Family Advocates, a Christian nonprofit that opposes abortion. He sat down with the conversation to talk about how the decision legally affects Hawaii.
Right, because
what's the conversation?
That was, remember, after it was overturned,
yeah,
a lot of us were saying nothing's going to change in Hawaii. So I think that's what they were trying to clarify, because even
this was Hawaii Public Radio,
right? And I did a bunch of those kind of articles too, because we were saying that all along. which again goes to the point of why we fight so hard to what's in our Constitution. Because if our Constitution allows something, it don't matter what happens federally, right? Which is why we're really concerned about what's going to happen on the marriage amendment. Okay, so let's go to the next one. So this is, so as we move into our last few minutes of the show, we thank you for hanging out with us. Jim,
that was actually kind of fun.
It was.
It wasn't really a roast.
Well, what was not in there is, and because I knew it was going to take a while, but we didn't say anything about you fighting for the rights of churches in the public school system, because that's another case.
That's a case that I left behind that Joe Gomes took over for me.
And so maybe what we'll do is we'll do another show when you're settled in your new location, and we'll have Joe come in and we'll talk about where that case is, because there was no way, Jim, I'm telling you right now, doing that search on newspapers.com, there were a lot of things. I was trying to pick the ones that kind of tie again into everything that we do. So last year in 2023, Hawaii Family Farm celebrated our 25th anniversary. And we established a brand new award, which is the Francis Oda Legacy Award. For those of you that don't know, Francis Oda was the first board president of Hawaii Family Forum.
But he was kind of like me because he had a private job. He was a very, very famous architect.
Right. And so our board, so last year we were trying to come up with an award that we could give to someone in the community who had a lot of criteria. And so as we're talking about this, I want to be clear that, this is an award that we're going to be doing every year, but it's going to be very hard to get this award because, again, it's got to be somebody who's out there in the community, who's put their name, their reputation, their finances, their efforts on the line. Francis was given back in the day, a pink cockroach award that the letter community decided they were going to start giving these awards out to people
community
who were fighting against them. And so Francis, well-known architect in the state, has fought for marriage. He's fought for family. He's building, helping with housing and homelessness, but he financially supported Hawaii Family Forum. He's been with us through the ups and through the downs. Moving forward to 2024, our board decided that you, Jim Hochberg, fit that criteria.
It totally blew me away.
And let me just say, I was there when we presented the award to Jim. I have never seen Jim Hochberg get verklempt. But Jim Hochberg got verklempt.
I did.
You get choked up. And then you made me choked up because I've never seen you choked up. But this is the picture of the award.
It's actually a crystal lighthouse about this tall, and it's very heavy. It's not one of those plastic those things they give out every, it's a major thing.
It's real crystal. And so I wanted to end on that Jim Hochberg, you are going to be greatly missed in the community, not only in your work as an attorney, but, as a friend, as a brother, an Alliance Defending Freedom attorney. So we want you people in Hawaii to know that even though Jim Hochberg is leaving on a jet plane, we don't know when he will be back again, but we do know that you're going to continue to fight for faith, family, life, and religious freedom. So as we end this show today, we send out our greatest mahalo to you. And for those of you that are listening and wondering what's going to happen with the FFF Show, we're still going to be here. I'll still be here. Jim will be visiting us maybe, whether in person or on Zoom. We'll just wait to see. So thanks so much for hanging out with us today. Make sure you like this video, subscribe, share it, and hit that comment.
Support.
Hit that notification button so you know every time we upload a new video. And make sure you stay tuned for next week. So we got some new co-hosts coming up. Not permanent co-hosts, but we'll just have various co-hosts. We will see you all next week. Mahalo, everybody.
Aloha.